Clearly inspired by classic Silent Hill games, expect a great classic survival gameplay with fixed camera angles, item management, and puzzles to solve. And for those people who preferred first person, just like me, after finishing the game for the very first time, you will unlock a first person mode, which surprisingly works pretty well. During a storm, your service dog was forced down on a broken sewer drain, and now you start a journey to find your lost pet. But just like any other horror game, it's far away from being a regular walk in the park, because there are creatures down in the sewers that are beyond human comprehension. Another horror game that aims to provide the lost art of classic horror. Did it succeed? If an announcement for a sequel is not enough proof of success, then I don't know what will. So expect amazing classic gameplay from fixed camera angle, item management to puzzle solving. Not your typical horror game, since there's no combat. Uniquely enough, you need to hold your breath and walk past by the monster. Or depending on the monster type, let the monsters walk past you. The game generally plays as a point-and-click adventure, inspired by real historical events in Taiwan during the martial law. So if you want an intriguing story, then this game is worth your time. Originally a Nintendo DS game back in 2007. Wow, I'm fucking old. Anyway, generally praised for how simple the gameplay is, yet still provides effective horror for a DS title, and now remastered for modern hardware for new players to enjoy and explore the horrors that awaits you. One of the most popular game in this video, a horror game made with Source Engine, which further proves how impressive the developers are. Although it relies a bit too much with its jump scares, the story will stick to your mind after the credits roll. Despite being considered as a masterclass of classic horror, this game is surprisingly free and even has co-op support. So if you never tried this game, it deserves your time and get immersed to its disturbing universe. PT or playable teaser, despite being just a demo, became one of the most influential games that up to this day, you can see some PT DNA on modern horror games. But sadly, it was cancelled. And Visage is one of the games that carried the torch left by PT's sudden demise. Photorealistic graphics, first-person gameplay for maximum immersion. So prepare yourself for some good jump scares. Imagine playing this in VR. If I need to describe this game as fast as possible, it would be Japanese Silent Hill, complete with obscure story and lore, unsettling creatures and body horror. And to top it all off, they actually use real persons' faces to add more creepiness to its horror elements. If you are easily disturbed or scared, please skip to this part of this video. You've been warned. I'm gonna say it right away. you're gonna have a far way better experience if you don't know anything prior to playing this game. So I'm gonna make it simple. It plays on a top-down perspective, as you can see, and that's all you need to know. And enjoy your experience in the Darkwood. From Software Games. Once you see their logo, you expect to get a great action game, but horror game is not one of them. Echo Night Beyond is a survival horror game, and that's how they describe it, by the way. But based on its gameplay, it's more of a walking simulator, where you try to help ghosts to get closure and pass through the afterlife. And some of the stories that you'll encounter would tug your heartstrings.
Of course, Papa. I never feel lonely when you are with me. Mama became a star.
This is a horror game that divides its player base. Others says this is an acquired taste, while the other one says it's a glorified walking simulator, that even the game itself doesn't have a run function. You mostly do mundane tasks, and the most popular one is dumpster diving, and that horrifies me. A Russian game with an amazing abstract representation of hell, in other words, Russian purgatory. Gameplay-wise, it mostly plays like a walking simulator, but with a very unique painting mechanic. So if something unconventional interests you, this game might worth you a shot. I'm not gonna even bother reading the name. This is a classic Japanese PS1 game, and prior to the making of this video, I got to admit, I really don't have any idea that this game exists. Based on the gameplay videos on YouTube, it's an FPS mystery solving type of game, with some horror elements sprinkled on it. Somewhere, I guess. If AAA games disappoints you, then Band Memories is another indie game take on Silent Hill, clearly aiming for the PS1 aesthetics and classic fixed camera angle. As the writing of this video, this game is still in development, and there's a demo that you can download and try it yourself. When it comes to horror games, compared to other genre, story is a main component on what separates a good from a great horror game. And Soma is one of the best games that shows that story is the best part of horror. The story will ask you the question of what it takes to be a human being. And if I tell you the story, it's gonna ruin the whole game for you. So let's talk about the gameplay. There's no combat this time. You need to hide from the monsters, solve puzzles, and interact with NPCs that will test your morality. So if you want to play a game where the story is 10 times scarier than the gameplay itself, this is the horror game that you need to experience yourself and will terrify you every time you remember the story. Now back to horror games that we can actually fight back. To explain it as simple as possible, this game is like a movie. You are just a regular meteorologist, yeah, nothing special, you're just a regular dude somewhere in Antarctica. Then some shit happens and now you need to fight for your life. Yeah, just like in any other horror game. Who the fuck wrote this shit? Anyway, one interesting gameplay mechanic in this game is that instead of having a traditional health system, your body heat temperature acts as your health points and avoid freezing to your death, literally. Even though this is an FPS game, don't expect to 360 no-scope monsters because remember, you're just a regular meteorologist. You are not a soldier. Gunplay is cumbersome, which works well in a horror game setting. So if you want a semi-survival horror FPS experience, then prepare your sweaters because Cryostasis got your back. Most horror games are single-player experience, but this game has co-op hard-coded to the gameplay. Whether you play locally with a friend or go solo, you will still be partnered up with an AI. Gameplay-wise, it's a bit modernized. Although it uses the classic fixed camera, it doesn't use the classic tank controls. Among all the games listed in this video, this is the least scary, but the most enjoyable if you have a friend or any loved ones to play with. Highly recommended. Back in my day, fucking old, Amnesia is one of the most played game in the internet. Then Penumbra comes second in mind. But this time, it's more of a sci-fi than supernatural monsters. So if you want to experience what inspired some horror mechanics in modern games, then play this classic series. If you want a modern representation of psychological horror, aside from AAA games, then Signalis is the perfect balance of story, horror, survival, and combat. But for those people who like first-person or third-person camera for immersion, there's even a community mod that lets you play on both perspectives. So you don't have any excuse to experience this modern classic. Don't let the classic Final Fantasy looking models fool you, because it's one of the best indie survival horror game you will experience that is set in a big amusement park, or I call abusement park. Even though it looks like a fixed camera, it's not. You are free to rotate the camera. There's even an exploration mode that removes all the monsters and allows you to freely explore the map. So if you want a well-made game for classic horror survival game enthusiasts, then this is the one that you should never pass on. This is simply the best survival horror game in a 2D perspective. There's combat, item management, and even some stealth. So if you want a simple game that lets you experience all the classic survival horror game tropes in a classic side-scroller way, then Lone Survivor might be your jam. Perhaps the strangest game in this video, where you change the facial expression of the main character before responding to NPC's dialogue. And as expected, depending on the facial expression, NPCs will respond accordingly. It's not a horror game per se, but come on, you have to admit, this face is kinda unsettling at the very least. It's more of a point-and-click mystery adventure game. So if you want to try something strange, then feel free to change your facial expression with this game. Fixed camera? Checked. No combat? Checked. Multiple characters? Checked. Puzzles? Checked. Permadeath? Wait, what? Procedural events? Oh, what? Okay. That's the simplest way to explain this game, with a unique style of silent yet surprising jump scares. This game is one of the most classic yet modern way to mess with your mind whenever you play.